Hello, ladies, gentlemen, and deceased. It is I am Mighty Sophia, here to break down for you guys the mid-season finale of The Walking Dead, start to finish. So, spoiler alert, as I shall be bearing all in this review, and without further ado, let's get into the business. This was by no means my favorite mid-season finale, and in fact, I think that they set up more bowling pins than they actually knocked down. To me, it kind of felt like all of the events that we dealt with in this episode could have been about, 5 or 10 minutes of the average episode. And yet things were kind of drawn out in order to create a cliffhanger ending on pretty much all possible fronts, which is just not terribly satisfying for the viewer. I mean, I don't know. I think that there is a fine balance to be struck between answering too many questions, it sounds like a strange thing to say, but, creating the sense of resolve and completion and not really holding people in suspense till the next season. And then, essentially what happened in this episode, setting everything up and watching everyone as they prepared to go forth and do things and as situations prepared to unfold. There was just not a lot that actually happened, at least from my perspective. So let's take a quick recap here and evaluate what we saw. So in terms of loss, I was fully anticipating that we were going to actually lose a character, being that the situation with Glenn turned out to be a big fake out, and it's been a long time since we've actually seen a main character beyond that in total jeopardy. Instead, what we saw was, Deanna bites the dust, and essentially she goes down as the captain of the Alexandria ship towards the end, and rather than allowing her life to be cut short, she wants things in her hands, in her grasp, and instead of using the bullets that she has in her gun on herself after being bitten, she unloads on a few walkers and lets out a roar and go Deanna. I mean, she had some cool moments, although I feel like kind of her end of days was a little bit over sentimentalized. I mean, we've seen a lot of these deaths in the past, and with kind of that emotional piano music in the background and letting them speak their piece, it's like I don't know. I didn't necessarily find her death all that compelling. I don't know. I don't know what exactly to say in that regard. Of course, she is one of the biggest characters in Alexandria and arguably the one about whom we would care the most. But nonetheless, I don't feel like this season or the season prior really did a great job of allowing us to connect with the Alexandrian community. I mean, in the last episode, we get these people that are like, don't give up on us, we're still okay. And Deanna's like, oh, by the way, Rick, these are not your people. And he's like, we didn't have time for it to become that. Like, I didn't exactly have the time to find out whether these people are worth my freaking time or not. But, so there's all these attempts at instilling within us a sense of affection for the Alexandrians, and quite frankly, for me, it's generally not really there. I mean, Jessie seems to be doing pretty well for herself. She's gotten with the program. Her kids, on the other hand, have not, as is evidenced by the fact that Ron is skulking around and trying to freaking murder Carl for what his dad did to his dad. And so, these little daddy's boys are duking it out at the least convenient time possible, and essentially the safe house is breached by Ron's actions. And Carl doesn't come out right and say what happened because they don't really exactly have the time to deal with the situation, but they all end up robing themselves in walker guts and preparing to make a break for it. And as we see so far, they're doing an okay job. They got their blood ponchos on and ready for the storm, I guess, except for Jesse's little son, who starts crying, Mom, and oh God, just of all the stupid things. I mean, I understand it's got to be difficult trying to trying to teach a child about the new world, especially a child who's been living in the shelter of Alexandria. Yeah, so we spend some time with the younger son as he's listening to Tiny Tim's tiptoe through the tulips and drawing sad pictures and letting ants eat his food and just all these, bitter, morbid things. And I mean, dude, even if you're a child, if you're a weak link in the system at this point, come on, even Judith's doing better than you. But yeah, so at any rate, a big situation that goes down is a confrontation between Carol and Morgan, which I did kind of see coming. And ultimately, she finds out about the wolf that's been hiding out in the hen house. She makes a break for it and goes to kill the guy who, as it turns out, Denise is stuck with and actually tries to dress his wounds. And then Morgan shows up. And he's like, I can't let you do that. And so a little bit of a scuffle goes down, and where it cut at the commercial break, I was trying to guess, who's going to bite the dust. Because Carol is so fierce, and she is so set on a goal, and so set in her understanding of how the world should be and how to protect others. And the fact of the matter is that you kill in order to not become a monster. Whereas Morgan is on the opposite camp, where if you kill, you become a monster. So the two of them duke it out, and as it turns out, conveniently enough, they both get knocked out. The wolf goes free with Denise and Tara's gun and all the good jazz. So just a great situation. And I don't know, it almost felt like a bit of a cop-out. It's like, okay, I would hate to lose one of those characters, and I would rather see Carol and Morgan both grapple with their worldviews together than for one of them to have to die in order to advance things. But at the same time, the way it was set up led me to believe that perhaps one of them was going to go this time around. But maybe they're waiting until the group is all kind of back together and there are more people who can react to a death. That's almost sort of the way things seem to be constructed. When there's a major character who's going down, there tends to be more of an exploration of how other people are responding instead of this isolated loss that everybody has to deal with after the fact. That's a tendency, though. Not every death has necessarily fit that template, so I'm not going to say that that's the way it's got to go down. It's just the way that I feel like it would go down. So anyway, I was fully bracing myself for a big loss and didn't necessarily feel that. So I guess some of that, based on my own expectations, I suppose that some of the emotional intensity was robbed for me, but that's okay. So then we had a lot of the major characters together, like Michonne and Rick. And Michonne is kind of the liaison to Deanna and the one to kind of carry her legacy forward, and she sees the plans, and they have this whole discussion about, what do you want in this world, and about making things work and making things sustainable. And that's something that Michonne, surprisingly, has really wanted. So I think that, I'm not sure what Rick is going to want to do after all of this, but it's possible that maybe she is there's going to be continued friction as they decide, are we going to actually try to make this place sustainable, or do we abandon ship? Is it all over at this point, And who freaking knows what's going on with the rest of the Alexandrians, or if Rick and company are actually going to make an attempt to get him out of the Badlands. I have no idea. Meanwhile, according to a little sneak peek scene for the next season, Abraham and Sasha and Daryl encounter a biker gang who appear to be affiliated with the notorious Negan. And all of their belongings are at that point claimed. And for this mysterious man, who clearly is bad news. I don't know anything about him yet, but I've heard things. I've heard the stories, and I know it's going to be bad. So that is an exciting little tidbit. We see that Maggie does escape to safety after clamoring her way out of oh goodness, I'm so sorry. Clamoring her way out of a bunch of walkers. And then Glenn and Enid get a peek at the chaos. And there's just all these things that are like, like, what's actually going to happen? How's this going to play out? We really didn't get to see how anything played out for the most part, except for the fact that Carl survived. And arguably Carol and Morgan survived, and there's going to be problems of all sorts and kinds in the season to come. So thank you so much for watching my review. What did you think of this episode? Did you enjoy it more than I did? I mean, I was just a little bit frustrated because I was expecting a heck of a lot more out of this episode, especially given that the first few episodes of the season were incredibly strong and among some of my favorite that I've actually seen in the show. Particularly the 90-minute episode with Morgan being a huge highlight. And after that, things kind of dwindled down a wee bit, but I think that we're going to be bringing things back to a good, solid status quo next season. Negan's on his way. Again, I haven't read the comics. I don't exactly know, but I can smell trouble from 10 miles away thanks to this series. So, thank you guys so much. Anything glaring or huge that I happen to miss, or even other minor details that I failed to address, I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions and reactions in the comments below. So, you guys, be taking care of yourselves. I will be back with more review content until season 6 resumes, so fear not, a full spoilery Jessica Jones review is on its way too. So, you guys, take care once more. Please, I gotta remind you, I don't trust you. I need to make sure you're doing good. And anyways, I will be back before you know it.